What's up, Star Wars fans? My name is Prince, and I'm an urban acolyte. In this video, we're going to talk about moving past the Jedi and the Sith. So this is coming from the Urban Acolyte Facebook community, and Latron Carter had this question for me. It's pretty lengthy. I'm going to read what he has to say, and then I'm going to give my response. So Latron started out his post. He said, "Prince, I have a real question." That's not a fake question, it's a real question. So all things point to, so far in this canon, an evolution from the Jedi and Sith Order. As much as it does excite me to see other practitioners like the Guardians of the Wills and the Acolytes of the Beyond, what's the best possible way to evolve the story to those opposite factions? I think the introduction of the Bendu was perfect. A Force user that has no empathy or sympathy for either order, and I would love to see the new interpretation of the Dai Bendu. But they have sewn the Jedi and Sith into the Star Wars universe for over 40 years. And if they do find a way, do you see a way for the Jedi and Sith to live again, like as the antagonist to Kylo Ren moving forward in his dark side teachings? Peace. So first off, let's hit this first line. You said, so all things point to, so far in this canon, an evolution from the Jedi and Sith Order. And I said, man, homie, this isn't true, right? So Legends also alludes to other organizations outside the Jedi and the Sith. George Lucas said that the Jedi and the Sith do not have a monopoly when it comes to the Force. They didn't have all the answers. Just like Kanye said to Sway, you ain't got all the answers, Sway. The Jedi and the Sith don't have all the answers. They are right when it comes to the Force from a certain point of view. Luke Skywalker echoes that statement in The Last Jedi when he says it's a fallacy to assume that the Jedi control the light side of the Force, or that the Jedi are needed to restore balance, right? It's true. It's one of those true but not true statements, right? Because Lord Santeca, even though he understood, and we learned that in the Poe Dameron comic book, on his adventures studying the Jedi and these different Force-related religions, he comes across that one ball, that sphere holocron, where you need a dark side user and a light side Force user to open it. They have to work together, or at least someone who I don't know, maybe one person who can tap into the dark side and the light together at the same time. I don't know how you do that outside of a video game, can open that thing, right? He understands that, look, everyone can touch the Force, but the way a Force sensitive person, a person with Jedi or Sith training, or one of these other groups out there that we don't know much about right now, they touch the Force in a different way where they can manipulate the physical world, right? But Lord Santeca tells Poe Dameron in The Force Awakens, without the Jedi, there can be no balance, right? And Luke realizes that, or returns back to that understanding, but it's like the Jedi can't operate they did in the prequels, right? It's up to them to embody the light side of the Force, but they also have to spread those teachings to everyone else, not stay locked away and secluded. So the Jedi, in that way, do have to come to an end, being locked away and hoarding their knowledge, not sharing it with everyone else, because that's what ultimately turned the Grand Inquisitor to the dark side. He just wanted to read a freaking book, and Jocasta Nu was like, no, you're a brute, you're too stupid, all you do, you stand guard, you like to fight, there's no way you're sophisticated or educated enough to have access to the higher knowledge that the Jedi Order possesses, right? And that's what turned the Grand Inquisitor to the dark side, right? He lost faith in the Jedi, but it was because he just wanted to read a couple of books. He wanted to check out some books from the adult section, and they wouldn't let him. All right, so another thing you said that I highlighted, you mentioned the Guardians of the Wills and the Acolytes of the Beyond. Here's the thing. The Acolytes of the Beyond, based on what we know now, they are an extension of the Sith religion. So they're not really something that's outside the Jedi and the Sith. What's the word I'm trying to think of? The dichotomy, right? That duality of this one particular branch of Force users, because the Jedi and the Sith, they're together. The Sith came out of the Jedi Order. And if the Acolytes of the Beyond came from the Sith religion, then they ultimately came out of the Jedi Order too. The same thing can kind of be said with the Guardians of the Whills. They have a different view of the Jedi than the Jedi when it comes to the Force, but they're training the way the Jedi do, right? They practice a martial art that's based on I guess an ancient martial art that developed on the Jedha moon, right? But they're very similar to the Jedi. They just differ when it comes to a philosophical view, right? It's almost like an Anglican and an Episcopalian, right? They're basically the same, but the Anglicans are British, Episcopalians are American, but they're still kind of the same, right? They're the same but different, right? One might be a little bit more liberal than another one. One might be a bit more conservative, right? And I'm not saying that the Guardians of the Whills definitely came out of the Jedi Order. It's kind of like, hey, we're like Jedi, but we're open to everyone, and we have a different view of the Force. And really the Guardians of the Whills, they're with the Brotherhood of the Whills. They're kind of the military brand. They're literally the guardians of the Brotherhood of the Whills, right? So when we talk about them, we need to understand more about the Brotherhood of the Whills and their view of the Force. I think it's like the unified Force philosophy or point of view, right? That the Force is just the Force, right? It's not really dark side and light, and you stick to this side. It's just the Force, right? I don't remember what that philosophy is called. You can look it up on Wikipedia and learn more about that, and I probably have to look at it myself for another video that you guys want me to respond to that my homeboy Den of Nerds did on Kylo Ren and Rey and the Cosmic Force. So I probably won't get to that until next month, like the first week of November, but be on the lookout for that. And if Den of Nerds, homie, if you're watching, hey man, let's link up sometime over the holidays and talk some Star Wars or do some kind of funky thing, because I know Special K to Ronin's been pushing me to link up with you, so let's do that real soon. Anyway, let's get back to what you were saying, or actually what I said. The canon has highlighted that there are other ways of knowing the Force, and there are other religions that provide a different way of looking at the Force. If you look at the Rogue One visual guide, you'll get some of those other religions that were there on the Jedha moon. I mentioned in another video the Night Sisters of Dathomir, a different way of looking at the Force. Yes, Asajj Ventress talked about when she was schooling your boy into some game. What was his name? The dreads dude with the psychometry ability. His name just slipped my mind. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Quinlan Voss. Yes, that talks about him needing to do that to tap into the dark side of the Force. Someone pointed that out in the comments. But according to the Book of the Sith, I didn't comment this. I didn't respond to that comment. But Asajj Ventress might not be the best expert when it comes to Night Sister magic, right? I know this isn't canon, but it's technically not canon. But in the Book of the Sith, Mother Talzin, I guess who was written the entry about Night Sister magic, says that it's not true that they're dark side, that it's a way of the dark side, right? Their religion is shamanistic in nature, right? It stems literally from the son on Mortis and the daughter, right? So it's like, if we're talking about the dark side, that's part of their magic, but another part of their magic is the light side. I think I mentioned that in the Ahsoka Tano video, and I think I edited out where I really talked about that. So you have to go watch the live stream to get the full everything that I had to say without anything cut. So like I said, Night Sister magic is a different way of knowing the Force outside of the Jedi and the Sith. Like I said, there's other religions. There's the group, they're technically not Jedi, that were mentioned in the last story in the Legend of Luke Skywalker, where they talked about the Force as the mist, right? And these people predated the Jedi from the way I was reading it. There's the planet that Flux came from. The Last Jedi highlights that because that's where Luke learned how to fish, right? They talked about the Force as the tide, right? So there's other religions out there. There's other ways of knowing the Force, and the people who know the tide, who understand it, don't believe in manipulating it. It's just like you can't manipulate the ocean. The tide comes in, the tide comes out. I'm talking about here on Earth, right? The moon decides on that, and gravity and the spin of the Earth and everything else. And if you're a Taoist, a Buddhist, I'm thinking of the book by Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha, where he, sat at the riverside, and that's ultimately working as the ferryman is ultimately how Siddhartha in that book, even though he met the Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, right? Shakyamuni Buddha, but him working as the ferryman and watching, the ripples and everything, that's how he ultimately found his own enlightenment after pursuing all these different paths, right? And that's really the way the people on that planet work with the tide. They observe the tide comes in, the tide goes out, the cycles of nature, right? But they don't manipulate. They just go with the flow, right? Different way of knowing the Force, right? And this is all stuff being introduced in the canon and things that Luke Skywalker observed that changed him to the person we see in The Last Jedi. Not the Luke Skywalker from the extended universe, from Legends, or maybe people's version of Luke Skywalker. It's this Luke Skywalker who was tired of pain and sacrifice and the loss, and he didn't like killing, and because it was all the same in the Force, and he became so ingrained and so in harmony with the Force that it was like, even to manipulate the Force, to kill, to do anything that upset the nature, disrupted the flow, to him was a bad thing. It was something he didn't want to participate in, and I think that's ultimately what led him to shutting himself off from the Force, and eventually what led him to return to the Force, right? Like Mark Hamill tweeted the other day, the Force killed Luke Skywalker. I will do a video on that if you guys want me to. So last thing, you said that I think the introduction of the Bendu was perfect. A Force user that has no empathy or sympathy for either order, and I would love to see the new interpretation of the Dai Bendu. I disagreed with you here because the Bendu had no reason to have any kind of view when it came to either order. What did the Bendu say? I'm the one in the middle. Oh, Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight. You serve the Ashla, the Sith serve the Bogan. Follow those sides, right? The Bendu, what did he say? Literally say, I'm the one in the middle. And that doesn't mean gray. Listen to the words, I'm the one in the middle. There's no color there. If he said, I'm the gray, I'm Bendu the gray, he would have said, I'm the gray, right? I'm the one in the middle, right? Whether you guys like it or not, this is why, like, when The Last Jedi came out and I had a lot to say and I was getting taunted and teased, oh, Prince says if you don't understand Star Wars, it's because you need to meditate. Look, there's a reason why I kind of say that, and people that feel that way, you're entitled to your opinion. I say that because in my tradition and in Ili Chin, the martial art style that I study, and that enhances the way that I look at Star Wars, right? We talk about there are limits to everything. And you can argue philosophically there are no limits, but in the end, philosophy deals with what ought. And I'm talking about what is. And what is there is a limit to everything. There's a limit to light. There's a limit to dark, right? And the transition is not gray. I don't care how you interpret that poem. That, first came the dark, then came the light, then something haze gray, refined Jedi sight. I said that every time I've made a video, I say, look, if you're seeing gray, it's because you don't understand. You have not refined your vision. You don't understand the transition from dark to light, right? It's just like if I'm talking about, we have their body lines, right? And if I say this joint is closed here, and if I'm here, the joint is open. If I'm here, it's obviously open. Here is closed, right? And the more I refine my understanding of the body lines, right, then I can understand, all right, you guys can't really see I'm moving, but I'm opening and closing those joints. I'm also moving my spine, which you guys probably can't see either, right? The more you refine this through this martial training, through this real life Jedi training, you start to understand the limits, and you can fine tune, right? So beginner limits are this whole area. This is the limit, right? And the limit progressively gets smaller as your understanding, as you refine your ability to perceive, to understand, right? And that's why I talk about the Bendu the way I talk about the Bendu. He's the one in the middle. He understands the difference, and he's right there and understands the limit of light, the limit of dark, right? And at the end, he says, I serve the will of the Force, right? And so he has no reason to side with either side. He's in the middle. He serves the will of the Force, and that's it. Just like I talked about the tide, right? The tide goes in, the tide goes out. The difference is that Bendu believes in playing his part in manipulating that, right? Because he believes that it's the will of the Force, and whether it is or it isn't, I don't know. That's his journey, right? So I would say don't get your hopes up as far as a new interpretation of the Dai Bendu. Maybe there'll be another group introduced, or maybe the Guardians of the Wills or the Brotherhood of the Wills are the Dai Bendu in the current canon, because I mean they look at the Force as the Force to them, and dark and light, they're all the same. To get back, I'm not really sure what your actual question was. Oh, you said, do I see a way for the Jedi and the Sith to relive again? Yeah. So this is where I'm going to bring it home. The Facebook group talked about, like, well, it's time for the Jedi to end, and Luke is the last of the Jedi. And all you guys like missed what Luke said at the end. I will not be the last Jedi. We see Rey. Rey is the last Jedi. Rian Johnson said that the meaning of the Last Jedi changes throughout the movie. Luke is the last Jedi, and then at the end, Rey is the last of the Jedi, right? She's got to build a new lightsaber, right? That's part of the final trial, to construct a lightsaber, to stand up ultimately to, I mean, she's already stood up to Kylo Ren once, but now whatever he is, she's got to stand up to the dark side, and it's up to her to rebuild the Jedi Order, right? So it's not time for the Jedi to end. It's time for the Jedi of old to end. It's time for the rise of the new Jedi, right? It's time for Rey to lead the Jedi of the future into the next era. And however this movie wraps up, they decide to kill off the Jedi, then it'll die with Rey, or she'll decide to do something else. But as of now, Rey is the last Jedi. So it's not time for the Jedi to end. As far as the return of the Sith, hey man, y'all saw my prediction. I don't think that Episode 9 is going to end the war. I think that Kylo Ren is going to be on the outs with the First Order. I started to say the Acolytes. The Acolytes of the Beyond could resurrect the Sith. They're an offshoot of the Sith religion. We don't know anything about the Knights of Ren. They're Force sensitive, so and they're schooled in the ways of the dark side, maybe by Snoke. Who knows? Maybe they're Snoke's acolytes, right? The students, the apprentices that he had previously, where people are saying he's had thousands. We don't know. All we know is that Kylo Ren was a student of Snoke. The Knights of Ren are dark side Force users who served Snoke and followed the orders of Kylo Ren as Master of the Knights of Ren, right? So I don't know. I would love to see Kylo Ren, become the Order of One, and rebuild the Sith Order, and everything that Anakin did. It's like, yo man, like, you just ruined your grandfather's legacy. He's already done that. And I'd like to see what that character can do. And as far as us having multiple factions all at war, when this ends, and it's like, well, there's hope, but there are more questions. and more questions, right? The more answers you get, the more questions you have. So those are my thoughts for right now. We'll just have to wait. And the amazing thing is, a year from now, we'll be talking about episode 9 and having seen trailers and articles coming out or anticipating articles from Entertainment Weekly and Anthony Breznican and everything else that'll come along with that. The hype train will be in full effect as we head into November 2019, a year from now. So I don't know, man. This was an interesting topic to discuss. Moving past the Jedi and the Sith, my question is, what do you guys think? Do you think that we will move beyond the Jedi and the Sith? Do you think that the Jedi and the Sith will rise again, and that we'll have an introduction of other paths, other branches, other ways of knowing the Force that will play a part in Star Wars as we move forward? And if you do think that, how does that look? How does that look to you? What would you like to see? Do you think that'll be something that'll be covered in the Game of Thrones dudes trilogy, or something that Rian Johnson will pick up in his trilogy? Because, hey man, I like more Star Wars, but I kind of want to see more Force stuff, right? I like space monks and space religion and lightsabers and telekinesis and all that stuff. So that's just me. I want to hear from you all. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll be checking back to see what you all have to say. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and click on that subscribe button so that you can take your first steps towards becoming an urban acolyte. Embark on the journey of becoming the hero of your own story and become a force for change in your community. Make sure to check out more videos from this channel, especially the one that YouTube has recommended for you. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. Thanks for watching. Y'all keep on breathing, and may the force of others be with you. Always.